This is Kim Meyer, host of Choose to Rise. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Ezekiel Drews, host of Podcast, a Star Wars story, here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you are done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Podcast, a Star Wars story, where we talk about anything and everything Star Wars. A new show comes out bi-monthly. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Podcast, a Star Wars story. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Beauties at Headcanons, where we're nerdy and you probably are too. This is Emily, and here I am today with two guests, Elisabeth and Lindsay, and we are here to talk nerdy to you. Today we are talking about Supernatural for the Advanced Watcher. So this is somebody who has maybe seen all of the Supernatural episodes that there ever, or maybe you're somebody who watched for a while and then just kind of let things slide to the wayside, or you're like interested in getting into it again, but you're not quite sure how things played out in the last season you watched or something like that. We're going to catch you up to speed a little bit and go through it season by season, character by character, with brief descriptions. But first, we're going to get a perspective from Lindsay, who just started watching the show. So she's going to tell us how far she's gotten, some of her own personal impressions and opinions on what we've got, and then after she's done, we're gonna dig a little deeper than what we did last episode, because last episode was just super bare bones about what Supernatural is. So Lindsay, go ahead, let us know, because you've been on special assignment here.
I have been. So I haven't really been someone who would watch this show. I never actually have like cable television, so I had to go on Netflix and be on special assignment and start watching from season 1. I did watch all of season 1, and I started kind of delving into how the show goes from season to season, and I ended up stopping at about season 6 and just trying to look at different elements of the show and the watchability of it. So I really love that this show does a nod to classic music. Just about every season you've got, and every episode I've watched has had this really cool background music that they're playing in the Impala, nice. And just some really cool season titles too. I don't know. I'm someone who loves to look at the way that they title the show, the way that they title the season, the way that they look at those things. So there's some really cool nods to literature, to some classic literature, and to some really cool lines in some classic songs that you've got. They've got the overlying "Carry On My Wayward Son" by Kansas that plays during their season recaps, and it's just so fun to just rock out to that at those certain parts of the episodes to listen to how they're going to play into the Wayward Son storyline. Generally speaking, I am enjoying what I'm watching. You guys briefly talked about the prodigal son. I don't know if you guys did actually talk about the prodigal son thing going on with the Carry On My Wayward Son. So you've got Sam, and Dean, and they go. I'm sure that Elisabeth will talk on this later, so I'm not gonna ruin it. We'll get there when we get there. But the Sam and Dean prodigal son story with Dad, and how Dean is the older brother. He takes care of Sam. He's always watching out for him. And Sam kind of has this wayward plot line throughout all of the seasons. It kind of seems like he's the one who we got to bring back. We got to watch. We're always watching him. So and of course it doesn't hurt that the actor's kind of nice to look at. And you guys did talk also about the different derivations of the angels and the demons, the archangel plotline. These are the things that really draw me into this show. Not only is there an arcing plot line, but there's also the Monster of the Week episodes where you get to, when they drop one of those in, there's always this really cool story about a different take on vampires, a different take on demons, a different take on the Wendigo or the Nephilim, all of these things that if you're someone like me, you're on Wikipedia and you're looking for this kind of stuff to find out what the background is, what the mythology is, and all of that stuff. So I do enjoy that you never actually have to say goodbye to any of these characters. We've got different seasons that end where someone is passed away or hurt or dead, and then they'll bring that character back to kind of tie in or to talk about heaven and hell and those different elements of the show. So not only are we talking about different supernatural characters, but we're also talking about the supernatural element of earth and heaven and hell and purgatory and all of those different things. So that's really where I'm at with the show right now. I'm excited to talk about it with you ladies, and let's go.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay. That's a really thorough impression of what you've seen so far. I love it. So now we're going to go to our resident expert, Elisabeth, who is going to take us through some more, some key characters, key plot points, and then how each season ended. And so we're going to start off with season 1 from the beginning. And like we kind of mentioned last time, the first few seasons are kind of like a Monster of the Week storyline sort of thing, but then there is an overarching storyline, and then in season 4-ish, was that correct, Elisabeth? Is where
about
larger
season 4
story plots. Okay, yeah. So season 4 is where larger plots come in, I guess. So, all right, I'll let Elisabeth take it away.
All right. Well, season 1 definitely plays a lot into the Monster of the Week storyline because they're kind of introducing this supernatural world. So they keep everything kind of simple. The key characters are basically just, Dean, Sam, John Winchester, just although he's largely absent, he's talked about a lot. His influences obviously felt a lot. And then Azazel, who is the yellow-eyed demon, obviously there's a lot of his influence in there too because, he kind of basically kickstarted everything.
Yeah.
So...
I at least know that. That's the one episode I saw.
Yeah. So, the pilot does start off, when the boys are young and their mother is killed, but it ends up with Sam has gone to college and he ends up getting roped back into the hunting life. And because John apparently has gone missing, and which in the hunting world is usually not a good sign.
Right. I can see how why not.
Yeah, so the boys kind of desperately try to find him just to make sure he's okay, and they eventually reunite to try to kill Azazel. And the very end of season 1 ends in a total cliffhanger. It would have been absolutely horrible to end the series at this point because at the end of that season, it ends with this huge, severe car crash involving the 3 Winchesters, and the last shot is basically just panning over the car with all 3 of them basically like unconscious.
Oh boy!
So. That's how it ends.
They could have been, but maybe they're not. But, ooh. All right.
Yeah, you don't know.
Gotcha. All right. It picks up again in season 2, thankfully.
Yeah, it does. And thankfully, season 2 starts off pretty much right from there. And it kind of carries on from that first story arc following... still has, obviously, Monster of the Weeks, but it kind of involves Azazel a little bit more. So... the main characters are more Sam, Dean, and Azazel because John actually ends up sacrificing himself to save Dean in the first episode. So he's pretty much gone. Yeah. So it all ends up... the original mission does get fulfilled. They do kill Azazel. However, during the course of that, Sam was killed, and Dean sold his soul to a crossroads demon in order to revive him, and as a result... he only has a year to live. And so at the end of the season, it's mostly resolved, but obviously there's some lingering cliffhanger regarding Dean's eventual fate. Like, are they going to figure out how to fix it, or, is he just doomed to go to hell in a year?
Yeah.
And then, Elisabeth, is this the first time we start to see that sacrifice that the family makes? That, not only does John sacrifice himself for Sam and Dean, but then now we've seen Dean start sacrificing for Sam?
Oh yeah, it's always usually about Sam. That is kind of the thing that was kind of drilled into Dean from the time he was very young. You know, protect Sam, watch over Sam. You know, make sure he's okay. And you know, John obviously looked after his boys, but at the same time, he more or less abandoned them. And you know, fans debate as to the varying levels of abuse that the boys suffered. But I mean, ultimately, at the very least, he abandoned them most of the time. And so Dean kind of had to step up and be that father figure, even though he was only 4 years older than Dean, or 4 years older than Sam.
Right.
So you know, his whole life is basically known as a hunter, not only trying to make sacrifices to save other people, but sacrificing to make sure that Sam is okay and that Sam lives.
Right.
Okay.
Awesome. And it's really funny when you think about it too. Like we start to begin to see that these guys are just sacrificing their souls for each other. Where John sacrificed for his sons, and then Dean sacrifices for Sam. And this is really where it starts, where you start to see how deeply the boys love each other, that they just can't handle life without each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably a bit unhealthy codependency, but I mean, it's helped them survive. So
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. All right. So a little bit of cliffhanger about what happened with Dean, because he brought Sam back, but also sacrificed most of his life then. So then season 3 comes into play, and we have a new-ish character.
We have a couple of new characters, actually.
Okay.
There is Lilith, who is the Queen of Hell, and she's a very powerful white-eyed demon. And their idea to try to nix Dean's contract is to take her out, because without her, obviously there's nobody holding the contract. And there's a black-eyed demon that comes in called Ruby, who kind of takes an interest in Sam, and she tries to steer them towards basically towards what she wants them to do. However, the brothers are unsuccessful in trying to save Dean from his deal, and at the very end, the very last episode, Dean is actually ripped apart by hellhounds and dragged to hell. So
well,
that's how
not
it
good. Oh boy.
Yeah. So that's how that is resolved.
Yeah, I'd call that a little bit of a cliffhanger, at least, because
just a little bit. I mean,
technically things got wrapped up and we know what's happening, but we also, oh boy, that's quite the ending.
I call that resolved but unsatisfying.
Ooh, that's a good way to put it. Really is a good way to put it. Yeah.
It does seem that's the kind of way that they want to end each season too. I mean, I always felt like I was on a cliff at the end, where I was like, oh great, now Dean's dead. Oh great, this is going on. Everything's going on, and then you only get a little bit of picture of Dean after the Hellhounds. You know the Hellhound came. You know that other things are happening, and that the gate gets opened when Lilith goes, but you really only see a little bit of Dean being ripped apart, and then end season. It's just every cliffhanger at the end of these seasons is very exciting and unsatisfying.
But then it makes you it's a good way to write for the show, because then it makes you come back for the next season. It's like, all right, well, now let's find out where we're gonna go.
And pretty much, yeah. Because after that, Dean will obviously be resurrected, but he does spend 4 months in hell, which, according to Dean, a month feels like 10 years. So he's really, to him, it feels like he spent 40 years in hell. So Dean is resurrected. He's resurrected by the angel Castiel. And this is when the angels start to come into play, because before this, they had briefly touched on angels, but they were never actually revealed as being real. Dean actually said himself, no, angels don't exist. Those are just stories. But obviously, that is not true. And so they end up working with the angels Castiel and Uriel to try to stop the apocalypse, because Lilith is trying to break all the seals to open the cage to free Lucifer. And so Ruby tries to assist them to kill Lilith. However, she's really working for Lilith the whole time, and the last seal to be broken is actually Lilith dying. So she hangs on until the very end, and Sam kills Lilith, and that actually opens the cage. And Ruby reveals that she was a traitor, and Dean stabs her. And it's a wonderful little sequence where she reveals herself as the double agent. She's like, I had you fooled. I was always faithful, and that's it for her. As for the ending of the season, obviously it's not as bad as a cliffhanger season 1, but still, obviously the apocalypse is about to kick off. So, it's like, what's going to happen?
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, kind of a big deal. And then, so some key new characters that are coming in. It sounds like Castiel is coming in. Uriel,
and the angel Uriel.
Okay. All right. So those are some key characters that we'll probably see again that are just coming into play at this point.
Yeah.
All right. And so they were trying to release Lucifer, and which actually does happen at the end, right?
Yes, Lucifer is released.
So then coming up into season 5, we're like, uh-oh.
Yeah, very heavy things starting to happen.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
I was going to say, there's also like this, I love to look at the literature. So we all know a little bit about Lucifer and what we're expecting from him. There's not a whole lot we know about Castiel or Uriel or any of that literature and lore, but we all have this idea that Lucifer is this awful, horrible nothingness, and to know only even just a little bit that we know about him, it's obviously this looming, dooming thing to want to release him from the cage. So there's this moment where we all have to understand that this thing that's going to happen has got to have dire consequences going forward in the seasons. So we know that something awful is about to happen, and that it's almost this very scary part of the seasons where you start to get glued to the idea that not only can this awful thing happen, but you've got these two people, Sam and Dean, that are just thrust into the middle of it.
So then being in the middle of it, they're in this starting in season 5. Then we're like, all right, so
yeah, they literally are in the middle of it. Yeah, they literally are in the middle of it because I think we talked briefly last episode that angels have to have vessels. And they have preferred vessels that will work for them better than, just anybody.
Right.
And Sam and Dean are actually two very important vessels. Sam is the true vessel of Lucifer, and Dean is the true vessel of the Archangel Michael.
Oh,
and yeah, so
those
the
are opposites.
Yeah, and for the apocalypse, basically Lucifer and Michael are supposed to fight, and one is supposed to kill the other, which obviously would kill one of the brothers. And so they basically, the whole season, they, are fighting against this. It's kind of where the whole team free will came from, because, they're like, no, we have free will, we can decide. Yeah. However, they do end up coming up with an idea to open the cage. To do that, they need the rings from the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which is death, famine, war, and conquest. And so they get those rings. They go to open the cage. Sam actually does accept Lucifer, but he can't keep control, and Lucifer ends up fully possessing him. Okay. So now Dean is trying to figure out, oh my God, what am I trying to, what do I do here? I can't just let Michael possess me, but I can't just have nothing happen. So Michael does end up possessing Adam, who is actually the youngest Winchester, and because he's John's son, even though he's illegitimate, he will still technically work for the purposes.
So he's an alternative.
He's an alternative. So Michael possesses Adam, and Lucifer is possessing Sam, and they do meet to fight. And Lucifer actually pleads with Michael, please, let's not do this. We don't have to do this. But Michael's like, no, this is what we're supposed to do. This is our fate, so we fight. However, the boys do end up interrupting them, and Sam is able to take over his body just long enough to open the cage and throw himself and Michael into the cage. Okay. So, and that is pretty much how the season ends. It's technically resolved, but I mean, again, it's a little unsatisfying because,
Yeah.
Obviously now Sam is in the cage with Lucifer and Michael.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that was really. I was so sad at the end of this episode. I just was. You get to the point where you're like, okay, I know there's a possibility that Sam could come back. I know that there's a possibility that this isn't necessarily how it's going to go. And clearly we're at an advantage at this point. We know that there's, 6 more seasons, 7 more seasons.
Right,
So
yeah,
we know there's much more to come on, and we know, that these 2 actors are definitely contracted for the rest of this time. So we know he's coming back. But can you imagine being that person at the end of this season on TV, watching this and saying, "Oh no," where now Lucifer and Michael are both in the cage, and this is where we're at for however long this season's going to end. I couldn't believe it. And it was so anticlimactic. They just drop into the ground, and that's it. That's where it ends. And Dean is slumped over next to the car, and it's just this breath out at the end of that season. This was the worst end of a season for me, where I was sitting there thinking, oh no, really? This is where we're gonna be? But then season 6 picks up in a very different place, where we're really thinking, okay, now what's going to happen? And that's when we start up with a year after that had ended, and then we start to hear a lot more about what Dean's been doing the whole time.
Okay, yeah. So it's been a year between season 5 and season 6, not necessarily in real life, but in the storyline of Supernatural, it's been a year.
Yes, it's been a year, and Dean has actually gone back to Lisa, who is kind of an old flame of his, and Lisa has a son, Ben, so he's kind of been living basically the Americana apple pie life.
Okay.
However, he discovers that Sam has actually been resurrected. They find out later he was actually pulled from the cage by Castiel. And so, obviously, Dean gets pulled back into the hunting life again. Sam is working actually for their grandfather, who is Mary's father, to hunt down and capture these alpha monsters. They were basically the first of any line of monsters, like the first vampire, the first werewolf, anything.
First,
yeah. And so, okay, that's cool, but Dean starts questioning, okay, why are we doing this? What is the point? And he realizes that Samuel is actually working for Crowley, the king of hell. And Crowley wants to use this to open purgatory and use the souls there to give hell more power.
Oh, so this is where Crowley comes into play. And we didn't get the chance to talk about Crowley in our last episode, but I know about him from several other series, and Lindsay does too, as the actor. So I know, and the actor Mark Sheppard is one of my favorite actors. He's excellent. And so I can only assume he does an excellent job in Supernatural as well.
Definitely.
But he's also in Firefly. He's also in White Collar and in Leverage. So if anybody's heard of those shows, he tends to play, I could say, like a chaotic, neutral / evil kind of character, but not so much in the evil. He kind of, he kind of is out for his own good sort of thing. That's the kind of character that this actor type tends to play. And so to me, that kind of tells me what kind of person Crowley might be, maybe.
Yeah, he is, obviously when they start off, Crowley is more of a, more evil character, but as the seasons do go on, he's revealed more as like a chaotic neutral character, where he looks out for himself, but actually towards the end, he will always back the Winchesters, because as he says, the Winchesters always win. So, and obviously if he wants to come out on the winning side, he will back the Winchesters. So,
okay, and that's smart of him.
I would agree with that too. I think that when I've seen him in Battlestar Galactica, it was the same kind of thing. So
okay, awesome. All right, so there's in this season 6, Sam, Dean, Castiel, Crowley, and Samuel, which is their grandfather, are the main characters running the show. All
yes, right. And by the end of the season, it's clear that Castiel does try to help the Winchesters, but it's revealed he is actually working with Crowley. He made a deal with Crowley that he gets half of the souls for heaven and Crowley gets half of the souls for hell. However, he ends up betraying Crowley in the end, and he opens purgatory before they plan to, and he actually takes all the souls, and he becomes what the fans have dubbed Godstiel, because he becomes so much more powerful, and that's pretty much how the season ends, with Godstiel coming into existence.
Gotcha. Now we're up into season 7.
Yes, so that takes place directly after season 6. Castiel, who is Godstiel, ends up not being able to control his powers, and so he releases the souls back into purgatory. However, these nasty, sinister creatures called Leviathans hang on, and they take over him, and they are released into the world to try to wipe out the human race. And this is where the character Charlie comes in, who is pretty much beloved by the whole fandom. Also, nice. The character Kevin Tran, who is the prophet of God, who is able to read the God tablets. He comes in as well. And also the main antagonist is a man named Dick Roman, who is this CEO who is controlling basically like agricultural things, and he's doing things to kind of sabotage the human race, basically, kind of tainting them and, more or less just killing them so that, the Leviathans can take over. The boys do figure out how to kill him, though, and they construct a special weapon to do so. However, when Dean uses it, what they don't know is that it pulls those closest to it into purgatory. So when he uses it, Dean and Castiel are pulled into purgatory, and Crowley takes off with Kevin Tran. So Sam is pretty much all alone at the end of the season.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that's kind of a cliffhanger there. Just like Sam's like, all right, now what, guys?
Yeah. And season 8 takes place just 1 year after season 7. Dean is able to escape purgatory with a vampire named Benny. He reunites with Sam, who has initially retired from hunting, but again, obviously, he's pulled back in. They find Kevin, who has escaped Crowley, and they also find Castiel, who has been brainwashed by an angel named Naomi. So he has to break free of that, and Kevin tries to help the boys seal hell, but the trials that Sam starts to undertake, it's revealed that it would actually kill him once the trials are complete, so obviously Dean puts a stop to that. However, the angel Metatron is able to manipulate Castiel, and he uses Castiel's grace to seal heaven, and so the season ends with all of the angels falling from heaven all across the earth. And that's how it ends.
Oh boy. So, no more angels in heaven. They've all fallen. So if an angel falls, does that mean that they're not allowed back in to heaven, or?
Not necessarily in this context. It just means that heaven is sealed, so nobody can really get back into heaven.
Gotcha.
So they basically just fall into earth, so they have to take vessels and try to figure out what to do, which in season 9, that kind of covers a little bit.
Okay, so go ahead and get into that.
Then. Yeah. So season 9, it starts off, Sam is obviously grievously injured from taking on the trial, and he actually slips into a coma, and it's kind of touch and go as to whether or not he will survive. Castiel, since he doesn't have his grace anymore, isn't able to heal him, so Dean pleads with the angels, any angel that will listen, to come and help. And he is visited by an angel named Ezekiel, who they manipulate Sam into consenting to Ezekiel inhabiting his body so he can heal him from the inside. However, Ezekiel isn't really Ezekiel. He's really an angel named Gadriel. And Gadriel had been imprisoned in heaven because he was supposed to guard the Garden of Eden, and he was obviously unsuccessful, so he was being punished for that.
I see.
During all this, there is the appearance of a Knight of Hell, which is a special demon who can't just be killed like any normal demon, and their name is Abaddon. And Abaddon is going to try to seize control of Hell, and so they're basically trying to fight, this thing on both sides. They're trying to fight heaven on one side and, Hell on the other side.
Oh, boy.
So in order for Dean to stop Abaddon, he has to take on the Mark of Cain. However, it gives him this insatiable urge to kill. So he has to fight that, and fight heaven, and fight hell. And he does kill Abaddon, but Metatron ends up killing him. And as the season ends, Crowley places the first blade back into Dean's hand, and it revives Dean. But the last shot is Dean opening his eyes, and they're all black, like a demon.
Oh boy.
So he has been revived, but he's a demon. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Season 10.
Yeah. So Dean opens his eyes. He's a black. No, he's not black. He opens his eyes, and they are black, which means he's a demon. At the end of season 9, so that's what we know.
And he is a knight of hell, but obviously Sam has to find him. There is a way to cure demons that they have found, so Sam is able to cure him. However, even though he's cured, he still has the mark. So throughout the season, he really struggles with the mark.
Which means he just has this desire to kill people, right?
Yeah, so he's trying to fight against those tendencies and not give in to them because, he doesn't want to become this mindless monster. He doesn't want to become a demon again. Right. But he doesn't feel that there's any resolution. So towards the end of the season, he actually contacts Death, and he asks Death to kill him, but to put him in a place where he can't come back. And this is the first time they reference the empty, but we'll get into that later.
Okay.
Now, obviously, Sam doesn't give up hope, so he works tirelessly to figure out a cure, and he does find it. And they are able to remove the mark. However, the result of doing that is the darkness is unleashed. Because the whole reason for having the mark was to contain the darkness. And in fact, the mark was originally given to Lucifer. And that is actually the reason why Lucifer fell, is because the mark corrupted him and made him the way he is. So he's not really bad just for being... Yeah, he's not bad because he's just bad. He was corrupted by the mark. And he passed it on to Cain, so it became known as the Mark of Cain, but it's really originally his. So obviously, at the end of the season, there's this big cliffhanger because Death is dead. Dean had to kill him in order to get out of his deal, and the darkness is released. So what's going to happen now?
Right? Like, okay, first of all, how is Death dead? And then what happens if people do die? If Death is dead, and then what happens is since the darkness is now out there. So that's, lots and lots of questions.
Yes.
Coming into season 11 now. Yeah.
Yeah, so season 11 just follows the release of the darkness. She is actually the sister of God, or the light, which God is revealed as being the author, Chuck, who some fans might know from earlier seasons. He's the one who wrote the Supernatural series that the boys found out about.
Okay.
And they originally thought he was just a prophet of God, but he is revealed to actually be God himself. So the darkness, or Amara, is, kind of mad because, she's been just sealed away this whole time, and she wants to destroy everything that her brother has made. But she does have a special connection to Dean, since it's basically because of him that she's released, and she does listen to him, and he is able to talk some sense into her, and she's able to come to a point where she forgives her brother, and at the end of the season, they actually leave to have a little family sabbatical together.
Oh,
so it kind of mostly resolves, but the very, very ending is a cliffhanger because the boys return to the bunker, and there's this strange woman there who shoots Sam and banishes Castiel with an angel sigil, and that's how it ends.
Okay, so something is definitely in the works then, because there's this other person so there's a bunker. Apparently they have like this, like their hideaway kind of place, or... Yeah. Okay, so she knows where it was.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in season 12, they reveal that she's actually working with the British Men of Letters, which it's revealed that the boy's grandfather, not Mary's father, but John's father, was actually a part of the Men of Letters, who is basically like preserving all this lore about the supernatural and everything like that. And there is a British branch who has now come in, and they want to take over and help the hunters in America. However, it's not... It's a little more than what it is up front. They basically have a join or die mentality. Oh. And so the boys have to defeat them, and they do. And, they're... I really don't like that kind of storyline, because it's just frustrating in general. The storyline that's really interesting, however, is Lucifer makes a baby.
What?
Yeah, Lucifer makes a baby. He actually possesses the president, and he has, he does the due with an intern, and she gets pregnant. And which
Okay.
obviously this baby will be a Nephilim. And she refuses to abort the baby because she has this vision that this Nephilim will basically help the whole world, and she doesn't want to deprive the world of that. So Castiel does end up protecting her. However, she will die in the childbirth, so she, obviously comes to terms with this. Right before she has the baby, obviously it's a very powerful baby,
Right.
because it's the Nephilim of an archangel, and he actually creates this rift between dimensions, and so they have to try to figure out how to seal this rift, and they do figure out how to do that, and they try to actually trap Lucifer over there, which they are successful in eventually doing so. However, Crowley willingly sacrifices himself in order to make sure he's sealed over there, and their mother, Mary, who has actually come back, ends up trapped over in that other dimension with them. And just as, an additional kick in the gonads, before Lucifer is trapped, he ends up stabbing Castiel with his angel blade, and Castiel dies. So the last season, Crowley is dead, Lucifer and Mary are trapped, Castiel is dead, and now there's this Nephilim who the boys have no idea if he's really good or if he's not, or what's going to happen.
If he'll be like innately evil or good or neutral. Yeah. Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. So we start back in season 13 right afterwards. The Nephilim, Jack, is fully grown due to his powers. And Dean and Sam kind of have differing opinions on what to do with him. But for the meantime, they take him with them because, what else are you going to do? You can't just leave the spawn of Lucifer out and about in the world.
Especially since they know who he is.
Yeah. However, he did have consciousness before he was born, and he identifies Castiel as his father, and he wants to do good. He's just very afraid of hurting others. And so he tries to, try to make it up to the boys. He is actually somewhat instrumental in bringing Cass back because he is able to reach out to Cass briefly where he is in the empty, and then Cass is able to bully the empty into letting him go.
Oh.
And he then tries to figure out how to get the boy's mother back, and that's where the season, the mid-season finale kind of left off. Was they were actually tossed again across these different dimensions, and then they have to figure out how to reunite and then how to get back with their mother.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten a chance to watch the other episodes that have happened since because I've had a lot going on in my personal life, but
no worries there. Totally.
But yeah, that's where it has pretty much left off.
Gotcha. So, that's a good cutoff point, too, is like the mid-season break in season 13, because there's the rest of it that's like happening now. So that's a good point to pick up at if you're like going through this and you're like, all right, now I can pick it up and we'll be good to go. Okay. So how many episodes were there before the break in season 13?
I think there was like 12 or 13, something like that. They usually cut it off fairly even though there's an odd number of episodes, but they usually do cut it off about the middle.
Okay. Alrighty. So that's what we've got so far for Supernatural. Lindsay, do you have any other tidbits to add? I know you've seen through season 6-ish is where you're kind of sitting right now, yeah?
I have actually looked at a couple of things on the fandom where they've done a couple of nods to the alternate universes where Sam and Dean are actually TV show stars, and those were that was probably the most entertaining episode I got to watch so far. And of course, I'm now listening to Elisabeth talk, I am very interested to see where they take the angels and demons stories, and it's really cool to have an idea of where things are going. I really am excited about the way that they used Cain and Abel and Lucifer and Michael, and like I said, the overarching storylines going back to family and brothers, and that kind of allegiance is really interesting to me. The bloodline of being from Lucifer and Michael, and then going to Cain and Abel, and using that storyline of the brothers and the jealousy and the favorite brother as opposed to those misconceptions, and Dean and Sam. And you always think in the first couple seasons that Dean is the favorite son, and John really kind of smashes that later, realizing that both of those boys were extremely important to him. But going back to family, and how family is not necessarily just blood, but it's also those entities even that are the most important to you and that are the most important to them. So that's really, like, I'm super excited to see the rest of the shows, but also it's really cool to have an idea of where they're going with these plot lines, and to be able to watch it to watch it continuously. Just like Elisabeth did last year. So exactly.
Right. Okay, well, awesome. Thanks to both of you, Lindsay and Elisabeth, for getting nerdy with me today. I'm so glad that both of you could join this episode. But also, talk nerdy to us. What's your favorite episode or season of Supernatural? Find Beauties and Headcanons on Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr to share what your favorite episode or what your favorite season has been. And also share your nerdy topic suggestions, because we're always looking for input from those who listen so that we know what you want to listen to. Subscribe to this podcast and others from Public House Media on iTunes, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and anywhere else good podcasts are heard. We love feedback, so if you liked this episode, or even if you didn't, go ahead and give a rating and a review so that we can keep making great episodes for you. So I'm Emily.
I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Elisabeth, and thanks for getting nerdy with us on Beauties and Headcanons.